Well, happy almost Christmas Saturday, everybody. We're back. I'm sports mental health empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I'm going to tell y'all something about him in a minute, but this is my most amazing co-host extraordinaire, Ronnie Ransome Jr., and this is House Talk Pregame. Happy almost Christmas Saturday, y'all.
Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. What a wonderful Saturday. Good morning to everybody out there in America and the world listening. Like Dr. Pitt said, this is House Talk Pregame. And look, y'all, you already know what we're about. There are many student and professional athletes who have struggled with mental illnesses and unfortunately are still struggling with mental illnesses. We know that mental illnesses are a complex problem that can hinder our athletes' well-being on and off the field. So improving our physical, spiritual, environmental, and relational health are equally important in having a great mental health.
It is true, Ronnie, and that's why it's so important for parents, family members, coaches, and teammates to understand both the mental health risks and benefits to ensure athletes have the greatest opportunity for success and, oh, by the way, enjoy playing the sports too.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about here at Pregame. Look, we love to educate, empower, support, and positively influence the holistic performance of today's student and professional athletes, their family members, and those invested in their athletic, professional, and personal journeys.
So, folks, this is the deal. If you struggle to understand mental illness and have compassion for those affected by it, then you're in the right place, because every single solitary week here on Pregame, we share powerful, we always put the disclaimer out there that it is raw, and we give it to you raw because life is raw. Life is not sugarcoating and mamby-pambying and patting you on the back and burping you and changing your pamper. Life is kicking your behind. So we give it to you raw the way life gives it to you. And it's life, sports, and mental health information to help you to make well-informed athletic and, more importantly, life-transforming decisions. And check this out, folks. If, in fact, you ever miss us live, that's totally okay, because you can catch us at this same time every day for our recorded shows on HSRN. That's Heritage Sports Radio Network, every Saturday at 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Saturdays, as well as 6 p.m. on Sundays. Look, folks, Heritage Sports Radio Network is about empowering the HBCU's families, head, heart, and hands to deliver the impact that we all know that it can. So don't forget to catch all of the amazing shows that are on HSRN. Our colleagues on HSRN are doing the darn thing. Some phenomenal information about anything and everything that is relevant information to us as a people, but really to all people in general. But there is emphasis on the HBCU family.
Absolutely. And I was actually checking out one of the shows earlier in the week. He had two well-known artists on there, and they were talking about, their influence on HBCU culture and things like that. So yeah, definitely check out the shows we have on our HSRN lineup. They're very, very great and powerful shows as well. And look, but if you want to be a part of the show, please join our virtual audience by registering
I said, we want them to. We want them to join the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want you to come on and join. And look, if you're a current or former student athlete, or a parent of a current or former student athlete, and like I said, if you want to share, some good news, if you need some support, encouragement, advice, whatever you need, please email us at htpregame@gmail.com, because we want to hear from you as well. And look, y'all, this is the last show of 2021. So it's only right that we give you all a great topic today and a great way to cap off the year. So today we're talking about family, the athlete's true social support network. And in terms of social support in sports, athletes have three main sources of influences as their athletic career progresses: their family members, their coaches, and their teammates. These social agents form a complex and multifaceted social network that may not influence or may have positive and or negative effects on the athlete's sports performance. So we're going to be talking about how imperative and how important it is to have a real strong support system around you as a student athlete and a professional athlete. We talk about support systems all the time, so we're going to dive deeper in that today to talk about some good things and some bad things about your social support system and thereon. And also, we have a lot of great news in the HBCU world, and also, our year in review of the year, so we got a lot of great things to get into. So Dr. Pitts, do you want to start off our mental health tip of the week this week?
I do. And I'm actually going to start off with a quote by Alex Haley. And for folks
Okay.
that don't know who Alex Haley is, the movie Roots. So I know some of the younger folks be like, Roots, what's that? So it's okay. It's totally okay. Alex Haley said, in every conceivable manner, the family is linked to our past and bridge to our future. Writer Alex Haley explored family deeply in his work, namely in his book Roots, which was adapted into the 1977 award-winning TV miniseries of the same name. The book depicts Halley's own ancestors who were abducted from Gambia and sold into slavery in the American South, and follows that lineage until Haley himself, came into the picture. Often focusing on Black stories and communities in his writing, Haley was adamant that family history is crucial in shaping one's identity. Though family can be complicated, those ties can tell us plenty about ourselves and where we want to go from here. My tip is old school. You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. Even though you might not be open and receptive to everything that your family represents or things that have happened to you in your family, there's a particular reason why you're a part of that family system. And my recommendation to you is to consider what you can do, particularly if you're coming from a family where there's a lot of baggage that you feel like has adversely impacted you. Rather than making a decision to perpetuate that cycle of whatever the negativity may be, give consideration to how you can be an instrumental part of the solution to break what the Bible would refer to as bloodline curses, to break the vicious cycle of whatever the negative issue is. It could be abuse, neglect, maltreatment, poverty, lack, whatever it is. You get to choose whether or not your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors align with who you say you really are and who you say you want to be. To dismiss your family of origin, to dismiss your lineage, in essence, is to choose to reject yourself. You are who you are because of that family. If you were born into another family system, you wouldn't be you. What you choose to do with everything that is representative of your family is up to you. I had a choice. Was I going to take on some of the negative behaviors and characteristics that were represented throughout my family system? Or was I going to allow those things to be stepping stones to catapult me to greater sense of self and greater accomplishment, to be a godly role model and example of what it looks like when you break those negative behaviors? I chose the latter. Where my paternal family is concerned, you all have heard me say a bazillion times on the show, I've never met my biological father. I have very, very limited information about the paternal side of my family. In my youth, Ronnie, it perpetuated all of this adverse and self-sabotaging behavior because I always felt like a very part of my existence was missing. I still feel that way, but I no longer allow it to be my excuse, to be my crutch for my engagement in maladaptive behaviors. Now, today at 54, paternal absence for me is a stepping stone that I choose to use to create platforms such as this and to propel me into all of the positive and productive things that I have done and am doing in my life in part to demonstrate if there's anybody in the paternal side of my family that unbeknownst to me is watching me, that I'm okay anyway. That's my tip. Be okay anyway. It's your choice. It doesn't have to be the bane of your existence. It can be your stepping stone. And you get to choose to set boundaries and standards that are representative of how you want to be treated in your family system. You can be the one that is the transformational leader and the agent of change in a family system that has the power and the potential to be a force to be reckoned with in a positive way. What will you do with your power?
That was powerful, and thank you for sharing that, Dr. Pitts. I don't even want to have to go after that, because that was, and I definitely want to, definitely flesh that out more in our topic today, because I think that is a very important piece. Because I think me and you have talked about this, outside of the show, about family and things like that. So, and that's very important. To your point, we can't choose our family. We can't choose them. We didn't ask to be put into this situation. And so I always tell people this, from birth to 18, you have no control over what happens around you and to you, at least in your development, as far as your environment, your family, social, and things like that. You are literally put there, and you just have to just kind of like, just wait it out. From 18 to the time you are no longer here on this earth, it is up to you and you only as the individual. Whatever family history, whatever family trauma, setbacks, maladaptive behaviors, whatever you were exposed to for 18 years, understand this. It is up to you to unlearn and relearn those traumas, those triggers, those maladaptive behaviors to become a better you, the individual. To Dr. Pitts' point, that's not to say that, you just cut yourself off from your family completely. Now, but I will say this though, part of that growth, part of that unlearning and relearning though, might require you to have tough conversations and to have, I can love you from a distance, but I can't have you right here, right now. Because
Right.
understand this, and I maybe come from I clearly come from a different generation than Dr. Pitts, but I would say from my perspective, looking at it is, to your point, yes, we should always stick together with family and things like that. And to your point, setting those boundaries are extremely important, especially if you come from an environment or upbringing where, love was not afforded to you through what we consider, emotional love and things like that. Love, for me growing up, like my mom was an emotional lover, but my dad was one of the people like, love, you see this roof over your head, you see this food on your table. Yeah, you see you got a bed to sleep in. Like, that's love. And as especially, I would say, like, the newer generations and things like that, understand this, parents can't give you what they never had themselves. And we're going to touch more on this later in the show, but parents can't give you what they didn't have. So when you become an adult yourself and you're exposed to that for the first time, understand this, like Dr. Pitt said, it is up to you as that person, or what they like to call it now, the generational curse breaker, and things like that. Understand the weight and the magnitude that carries of wanting to be that person. And so I don't want to go too deep into it, because that's what the whole show is for. But yeah, no, I really like that point that you made, Dr. Pitts. I think it's extremely important to understand that, yes, we can't choose our family, but we can learn how, as the individual within the family system, how to navigate loved ones, and where, yes, I can, like I said, I can love you from a distance, but me and your relationship is what it is, because I have boundaries, not for you, but to protect me and my peace and my sanity.
Right.
And so we're going to get more into that later in the show. But thank you for sharing that, Dr. Pitts. I don't have a mental health tip of the week that's going to be better than that one. So I would appreciate piggybacking off of you on that one.
No problem.
Before we get into the HBCU news, Dr. Pitts, I wanted to ask you a question. This is our last show of 2021. And we're currently in season 2 of House Talk Pregame. But I just wanted to ask you, from a personal, professional, and just personal and professional, how would you grade your 2021?
Wow.
Let's start with professional first.
Yeah, professionally, 2021 was representative of exponential growth. When I came into 2021, Ronnie, I had, I want to say 12 clients. Now I have close to 100. So when you talk about the seed of the equivalent benefit, for as heart-wrenching and heartbreaking and devastating as this pandemic has been, I've shared on the show that amidst the pandemic, we lost my husband's father, and so many, the other day, I was watching the news, and the death toll in the US had reached 800,000 because of the coronavirus, and just so much devastation. But even amidst all of this devastation, I am so blessed, and so what I truly believe to be highly favored, in that me and my family, immediate and extended, have been blessed and fortunate enough to thrive. We have grown by leaps and bounds, emotionally, physically, spiritually. God is prospering us. It's just been amazing. And I know you asked me about the professional, but it's a trickle over effect for me, just by design of the nature, of my work, because I have, just like you do, I have family members that are going through it. And, some of them have entered therapy themselves, but some of them just call me to talk. And I'm okay with that. They know that the conversation is only going to go but so far, because I'm not going to enter into a therapeutic relationship with them, because that's unethical to do that. But I do guide them. I do give them insight. Some of the family members that I have that have entered treatment because after our conversation, I've said, you need to see a therapist. You really need to be able to flesh this through and out, because this pandemic is steamrolling folks. It is taking a toll on people's mental health. Also professionally, I was on the fence, Ronnie, about, do I want to go brick and mortar, or do I want to continue to work? Do I want to continue to work virtually? And at least for now, we've decided that I want to continue to work virtually, because what was a big deal for me is being able to have a global impact with regards to sports empowerment and clinical work. So I'm blessed in that literally right now, my client base it literally expands the globe. I work with clients literally right now, I want to say in 15 different countries. And it's, and of course, sports looks different in every country, depending on where you are, but the psyche is the same. You know what I mean? The pressure is the same. Depression in Belgium looks just like the depression in the US. So that has been a tremendous blessing, that I now have a global presence, and it's answered prayer, Ronnie. It is answered prayer. I had no idea. I had no idea that God was going to do it this way, but He did, and I'm so humble, and I'm so thankful, and just so grateful for the many, many, many opportunities that have been afforded me to just make a difference in the lives of athletes all over the world, and former athletes all over the world. I'm honored. I really am honored to serve in the capacity that I'm able to serve. Um, Personally, it has just been, it's been a roller coaster. I got married, and the adjustments of of balancing. I was talking to some clients yesterday in session, and I was saying, y'all gonna stop thinking that Dr. Pitts levitates and floats on water. And we go through stuff too, we go through stuff. I keep it, my own marriage is practice for my daggone clinical practice. I'm like, let me try this coping skill. I'm like, yeah, y'all should try that. It works. Don't do that. That don't work. you know, my own marriage is practice for my clinical practice.
I feel
But
that.
yeah, blessed and fortunate to be married to a wonderful, wonderful human being who is just the sweetest, kindest person you could ever meet. He gets on my nerves. He gets on my nerves. I ain't saying nothing behind his back, but I don't say to that Black man's face. He gets on my nerves. He gets on my nerves, but I love him anyway. And he's good to me. He is good to me. We acquired our dream home. It has just been amazing. It has just been an amazing journey. It's been hard at times, but it's been working out. It has been working out, and I'm blessed. I can tell you, Ronnie, this is the first time. Oh my goodness, I would go as far to say this is the first time in my entire adult life where, even though I'm looking forward to all of the things that 2022 is going to bring, I I have not said I cannot wait for 2021 to be over and to start I haven't said that. And I used to say that used to be my narrative every year because life was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Life was so incredibly hard. But I'm looking forward to it. Our lesson in Bible study on Wednesday was, this is our last night in Egypt. Ronnie, I got that thing down in my toenails. It was just such a powerful, powerful message. And it gave me just a different perspective of going into 2022 with a different set of expectations and hope that is different than what I've previously experienced going into the new year. So that's me. That's what it's been all about for me. What about you?
Man, so professionally, I would say professionally, coming into 2021, I just got my master's last December, just graduated. So I was super excited about starting residency for licensure. I was able to start that in March. And I would say, I think my overall theme for this year, if I had to describe professionally and personally, would be growth and understanding.
Amen.
And with a sprinkle, well, not a sprinkle, with a good side serving of patience.
Amen. Amen.
And I really feel like this year, like I always tell people, like, and I can't remember his name. We had him on the show back in September, the coach in Philly, Coach Hanik Ryan, right?
Yeah, Ronnie Kane.
Ronnie Kane, yeah. Apologize about that, sir. But I was thinking back to the conversation we had on the show back in September. And the thing that stuck with me that he said, and that was kind of like my overall theme for this year, was to just practice being still. Practice not being a roller coaster. And that's easier said than done. Professionally, I became a supervisor this year for counselors, which if I'm being if I'm being honest, supervisor is not one of my favorite roles that I serve, but it's an important one because it shows you, like, as much as, I mean, with anything, as much as counseling is, supposed to be person-centered and human focused and things like that, it's also a business. And by being a supervisor, it has also shown me that, not only do I have to keep in mind, the role that we serve as counselors and therapists, but also keeping in mind that somebody also has to, have a checks and balances of these counselors and therapists as well. So I do take that role with pride. It is not an easy role. I know, and I think all supervisors and managers out there listening, whether you're in counseling or not, can agree that being a supervisor or manager is not always a fun role, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and even with that, it has taught me a lot of patience and growth and understanding of, like you said, we have lives too. We have our own things going on. We have things that we're dealing with and stuff like that. I got to start being an outpatient therapist this year, which was one of my biggest goals, is because I love therapy. I love it. I'm a big advocate for it. I always tell people, hey, try it one time. You never know. It might work for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love being a therapist. It is absolutely amazing. I didn't think I would like doing virtual sessions because I like being in person and that human interaction and stuff. And I think that is a big part of what makes us, great as clinicians, is having that, interaction, in person. But virtual, I've gotten, I've learned to adapt. I will say I've learned to adapt and learn to, make it work. And it is super convenient. So that's also a plus too. And then personally, I think the biggest message for me personally has been patience and understanding. Me and my wife, we had a son this year back in June who actually just turned 6 months yesterday.
What a gorgeous son he is.
It has been the fastest, longest 6 months of my life. Like, I was just thinking, like, dang, like he's really 6 months already. And I'm just like, I feel like I have lived every day of the last 6 months in ways I never have before. And, being a father of a son in the climate we live in, I always felt like, I never really shared this with a lot of people, but, when we first found out we were having a son, I'm not gonna say I was scared, but it gave me a lot of anxiety. And at first I was all gung ho on having a daughter. I was like, oh man, let's have a daughter. I'm cool. Like, shoot, I mean, that's cool. But when I found out we were having a son, I was like, yo, this is gonna be like, this is gonna make me a man, because to our point earlier about, unlearning and relearning and things like that, there's a lot of things that I had to unlearn and relearn just from me and my father's relationship. And, like I said, my father was somebody who was not expressing emotions is not his forte. And that's fine. I'm to the point now where I'm fine with that. And that's cool. I know he cares and I know he loves me. He just has his very own unique way of showing it. But for me, and I think it's important for all men to, you have to have a balance of your emotions as a man. You have to be able to confront them and face them. And a lot of times as men, we don't. And that's where you see a lot of this anger and irritability and just, always a chip on your shoulder and always trying to prove people wrong and things like that. When in all reality, we're just trying to prove ourselves right and get validation for how we feel about ourselves. And so one of my biggest goals as a parent that I set out for this year, and just not only as a parent, but personally, was I need to be able to display and have the patience that I wish that was given to me growing up.
Yeah.
And I think because patience, I always tell people, I always ask people, do you ever pray for patience? And
Don't
they're like,
do that. No, indeed. Why would you do that? Never do that.
Pray for patience?
Never. Are you crazy?
But you'd be surprised, and you'd be surprised at how many people say, "Yeah, I pray for patience," and I'm just like,
because they don't know no better. You're inviting the freaking forces of hell to come against you when you pray for patience, because how can you learn it if you aren't put in all these situations? You better let that thing happen naturally. you pray for patience. That's like saying, "Oh, steamroll me and break all my bones and let me be patient with this pain and this rehabilitation." I tell people, don't ever pray for patience. You better just.
And that's true. I don't necessarily tell them don't pray for patience, but I ask them, and when they say yeah, when I was saying, I'm like, well, you can't, like, patience is just something that is just dropped in you. Like, you wake up one day and like, oh, I think I'm more patient today. Patience is one of those things that is learned, it's a muscle. Patience is a muscle. You have to build that muscle. And if you don't practice it, guess what? Just like if you don't work out, your muscles, they dissipate, they go down, they atrophy and stuff like that. Just like patience. Patience is a muscle. If you do not practice it and work it out, it will atrophy. And for me, going into 2022, I feel like each year, like I think for this year, I did a lot of self-reflecting. I did a lot of, accountability checking and stuff like that. And for me, 2021 was a good year, but I can be better. And,
Amen.
and I mean, some people might say, oh, well, that's an athlete's mindset, always looking for room for improvement.
That
And
should
I
be a
mean, yeah, I
human
mean,
mindset.
exactly. And I always tell people, like, the moment you stop learning or stop growing, you die.
Yeah, that's real
And
talk. I just said that
and
to a client earlier this week. I did. I swear. I
it's
totally did.
real.
That's truth.
It's
That's truth.
real. The moment you stop learning and you stop growing, you die.
Yeah.
Because like I always say, I don't know where in society we got to the point that when you reach a certain age or a certain point in life and you just say, you know what, I'm just gonna mail it in and just exist the next 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
No.
that's crazy.
While you are breathing, while you are living, while you are aware, while you still have your
Mhm.
sane mind, that is an
Mhm.
opportunity each day. I always tell people, our coach used to always say, get 1% better today than you were the day before.
Mhm.
Not 5%, not 10%, not 20, 1%.
Mhm.
1% better. If you aim to get 1% better every day for a year, if you were in stocks and people who understand stocks and stuff like that, if your portfolio grew by 1% each day, if you went
Mhm.
back year over year and somebody said, yo, your portfolio grew 365%, you could be
Mhm.
like, oh, I did something good. You can still
Mhm.
have that very same mindset for your personal growth. And so
Mhm.
for me, that's always been my motto. My mantra is just be 1% better today than I was yesterday. I'm not
Mhm.
aiming for perfection. I'm just
That's right.
aiming to be me.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like, that's my goal.
Can I piggyback on that?
Go ahead,
You
sure.
said something powerful because, and I believe my number is correct. If we each live another 365 days, which of course is a year, we will have 525,600 minutes of life to create. And here's the catch that when you said it, it clicked for me. Ronnie, we don't get to not create. We can we can sit by and not do anything to mold and shape our life and to put forth effort to get better, but life is still going to create itself.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're moving forward, you have a choice. What are you going to do with your 525,600 minutes of 2022? Are you going to make choices that are indicative of who you say you really are and who you say you want to be and the life that you say you really want? Are you just going to allow life to create itself and sort of just have its way with you and you just get whatever life throws at you? You do have some control. You do have some say so in how your life shapes out. No, you can't control everything, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can control in a positive, productive, and healthy way. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your 525,600 minutes in 2022? Is it going to be more of the same? Are you going to look the way you look and act the way you act and feel the way you feel at the end of 2022, the way 2021 is shaping up for you? You get to decide. You get to decide if you're going to experience more and different and better. What I tell people is this, and I think I mentioned it on a previous show. Picture yourself in a circle that
Mm-hmm.
represents your comfort zone. But that comfort zone also represents discomfort, dis-ease, and discontent. The perimeter of that comfort zone is fear and anxiety. Beyond the perimeter are the infinite possibilities that are represented by those 525,600 minutes. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? It's up to you. You gonna say that you can't do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, X, Y, and Z because of your family? What you gonna do?
That's real. That's real. And so, so my encouraging challenge to everybody out there listening today is the 18th. So we have 13 days left in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely implore everybody to reflect on your year, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Reflect on it and ask yourself, what can I do to get 1% better every single day in 2022?
Indeed.
We're not asking for perfection, and that's never the goal. I always tell people, the one person, whether you're religious or not, and I always tell people, whether you're religious or not, the one person who was described as perfect, they got him up out of here too.
Yeah.
So being perfect does not guarantee that you're going to be here forever or your time is going to be great or anything. You can be perfect and they'll still get you up out of here. So perfection should never be the goal.
Excellence and greatness.
Unless it's in sports and you're trying to go undefeated, then hey, that's
you in your eye. And don't think I'm not going to tell everybody what you did to me last week. I'm telling. As soon as you pass the mic back to me, I'm throwing you behind smooth under the bus.
Dang, I thought we forgot about
that. No, I wasn't gonna forget that because you were ignorant. You were ignorant and mean and insensitive to Dr. Pitts. And I'm telling the whole world what you did to me.
I thought you said it's time for the HBCU news. That's what you said.
Before we go to the HBCU news, I do, on a serious note, I want to shout out my son's father, Alan Russell Garlick, my baby daddy. He celebrated his 53rd birthday yesterday. Extraordinary former scholar athlete, did the darn thing at Salem High School, did the darn thing. And oh, by the way, Salem Rams won the state championship, Ronnie.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
Our Salem Rams won the state championship. Alan celebrated his 53rd birthday yesterday. Literally freaking scholar athlete his whole life, but played football for Salem High School and played football for the College of William and Mary. So shout out to him that he had a wonderful and safe and blessed happy 53rd birthday. And before we move on to the HBCU news, let me just tell y'all what this man right here did to me. So I'm sitting here in my own home, minding my own business last week. And I get this here good message. Matter of fact, I got the message. I was in church. Let me correct that. I wasn't even home yet. I was in church.
In the house of the Lord.
I get this message with my co-host extraordinaire says, y'all know you're getting blown out today, right? That's what we doing?
So hold on, time out. What was the picture that I sent?
I don't even remember.
So I knew. So folks, before she finished, let me set the scene real quick. So her Dallas Cowboys, her team, America. It's funny. I'm glad y'all say America's team, because if we're talking about America's team being that dysfunction and can't get out their own way, then yes, that is an accurate description of America's team. But however, America's team is so petty, because she left that part out. They are so petty that in the history of FedEx Field and all the games, all the away teams that have been there, the Dallas Cowboys are the first to waste money on bringing their own benches from AT&T Field to FedEx Field for a game. Now you can continue.
So basically what you're saying is you're hating because we have standards and we wanted our own benches and could afford to bring them. That sounds like hate to me. But anyway, he sends me this raggedy behind me with this raggedy behind message that says, y'all know you getting blown out today, right? I didn't hear nothing from him. It was 6-0, 12-0, all the way up. I never heard from him again until the Washington football team started scoring and come back. Then he gonna send me eyeballs. he gonna send me eyeballs. And the non-spoken message that I got is, oh, what you gonna do now, Dr. Pitts? You nervous? You scared? You know what? I have faith in my team. I have faith in my team. I'm not going to act like I didn't get mad and be tempted to throw the remote at the TV. I'm not going to front and act because y'all know I got anger issues. I had screamed so loud that I woke Eric up. He was like, what's wrong? I said, I'm about to blow this game.
Y'all can't be doing that. Y'all, look, our hearts ain't good like that.
Man, listen, I screamed so loud, I scared him awake. And he was like, I said, they're about to blow this game. I was so mad. And I did. I have to refrain. I have thrown the remote in the floor. I have thrown pillows in the floor. Look, here's your running joke. I didn't even print the schedule this year because in the past 30 years, I'll get so mad that I rip the schedule up and throw it in the trash. And he'll say, look, Ronnie, he'll say, babe, how many times you gonna rip the schedule up this year? Like, shut up. I didn't even print it this year. I just pulled the schedule up on my phone because I have the app, because I'm diehard. So I got the app on my phone, so I get the news and our podcast and all that stuff. I get alerts in real time.
Jerry and Steven.
Let's go on this topic, man. HBCU news game. The championship game is today on
ABC. It actually comes on in 20 minutes.
Yep, South Carolina State versus Jackson State. Go Coach Prime. Woo, woo. And go ahead and give that HBCU news so that we can get to talking about folks.
Yeah, and speaking of Jackson State, so for those of you who have not heard or not listened or haven't caught up in sports, so on Wednesday was the early national letter of intent signing period for high school football athletes to sign to their schools and whatnot. So going into the day, there were rumors that Coach Prime, Coach Deion Sanders at Jackson State University, was talking to the number one recruit, Travis Hunter, out of Collins Hill High School in Georgia. He's originally from Florida. And for those who don't know, Travis Hunter is a wide receiver and defensive back, rated the number one player in the country for the class of 2021, well, class of 2022, 21, 2022, whatever class they're in, I don't know. So he had originally committed to Florida State last March, before the pandemic started. He had committed to Florida State. And there were rumors that he was talking about maybe switching to Georgia. He shot those rumors down. And there was another school that had rumored to where it's possible going to get him. He shut that down too. Then Wednesday gets here. News broke out. Travis Hunter decommits from Florida State and signs to Jackson State. It is the first time that a five-star recruit has signed with an FCS school or a Division I AA school, let alone the first time ever that a five-star recruit signed to a HBCU. And I think this is a huge, huge, huge accomplishment, not only for Coach Sanders and Jackson State, but for the HBCU world. Yes. And, just the climate of college football in HBCU world. Yeah. Do I expect this to be a theme every year where we get the top one or two players in the classes to come to HBCUs? No. But I do think that Coach Sanders has paved the way for us to be able to get maybe two or three of the top 200 and 300 players to consider HBCUs and come down here. Like we said last week, Coach Hugh Jackson of the Cleveland Browns, he signed on to be the head coach at Grambling State. So he has a lot of influence and power and things like that. And just real quick on the significance of this, and we talked about this last year when it was found out that Coach Sanders was going to take over Jackson State and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And my challenge is, I hope that he can create a system in a platform, not only for him, for however long he's going to be there, but for other Black coaches, because one of the things we know is that coaching is a good old boy system as well. Yes, sir. It's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And once you get in, they just rotate you from school to school to school to school, whether or not you're a great coach or not. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that are coming out about Coach Sanders is his passion for coaching is one of the things that is making this almost a match made in heaven. Mm-hmm. Because, when you think of defensive football, when you think of cornerbacks and defensive backs, that's number one right there. Yeah. Coach Nick Saban at Alabama, he coaches the DBs and everything. Phenomenal coach, puts him in the NFL, but he ain't Coach Prime. He's not prime time. Yeah. Coach Saban can't hold a candle like the Coach Prime when it comes to DB knowledge or DB talent. Can't hold a candle to him. So I think that his passion for coaching and his, I mean, if you have Deion Sanders come in your house and say, I want you to come play for me, I don't know. I can tell you one thing, I'm not saying no. I'm like, coach, did
Doesn't
you?
seem
I'm
like
like,
rocket
coach, did you?
science to me.
Like, coach, did you bring the papers with you? You come in my house? Oh, it's a done deal.
Like, mama, we gotta give me some luggage.
What? And so shout out to Coach Prime for pulling off historical and monumental moment for HBCUs. And I think going forward, like I said, I don't think HBCUs will get the top 2 and 3 recruits every single year. But if you can get a 4-star recruit and maybe a couple of transfers, you can have something to reckon with. You can have some real problems on your hands. And I think that competitive nature can come back. But I think this is also a challenge to HBCUs in the sense that, look, like one of the things that Coach Prime has, a wealth of resources, not only his own wealth, but he has a wealth of resources. Yeah. I think this is a challenge to HBCUs that, look, as alumni, as a support system, we have to give back to our schools. We have to support them. Coach Prime, he has his resources. All that money is not coming into Jackson State just from alumni and stuff like that, but it would help if their alumni started pitching in more and stuff like that. They would do even greater things. So shout out to them. I think that is a wonderful and momentous thing, and I hope we can continue to build off of that and really see some prosperity and some significance come back to HBCU football.
That's good stuff. Good stuff.
So, all right, y'all. So let's get into this last topic for the year. So like we said, we're talking about family and support systems. Mm-hmm. And, when we think of support system and we think of family, especially in our culture, especially in Black culture, family is everything. Family is important. Family is the end all be all for us. Mm-hmm. And, when we talk about student athletes and professional athletes and things like that, one of the biggest motivating factors for a lot of student athletes, and you hear this over and over and over again, is I got to retire my mama, or, I don't want my parents working anymore.
Got to get them out the hood.
I got to get my family out the hood. I got to get my parents to this. I got to do that. I don't, my parents sacrificed everything for me. And, now I want to be able to repay them. I think every student athlete and professional athlete has thought about that and said it at least at one point in their career. Mm-hmm. And I think for some people, your first support system growing up oftentimes not is your family. Now we know that in some circumstances, there are some people who unfortunately do not get that support from family from day one, unfortunately. And, so we'll also touch on that as well. But for those who are raised by their biological parents from day one and things like that, that is oftentimes your first support system. Yeah. Those are the first people who put you into sports, who, take you to, camps and seminars and coach and all these type of things growing up and stuff like that. But oftentimes what we don't fail to realize is, like we said earlier, even talking about, me and Dr. Pitts being clinicians and things like that as well, we're also people too. One of the biggest things I think we also fail to realize is, and like we talked about, just as much as your family can be a benefit and a positive to you in your athletic career, they can also be a detriment and derail your athletic career as well. And so Dr. Pitts, before we start getting into the nitty gritty, what are some of your thoughts of when you think about a student athlete and a support system of family and things like that?
I think it's a critical element. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is how important balance is. When I think about, again, growing up in a family full of scholar athletes and the dedication.
So I do not know if her screen is frozen or not, ladies and gentlemen. But so as I was saying, when we talk about support systems and things like that, and the importance of that in
yeah.
You had froze up. I apologize. I didn't know if you were still talking or not. You had froze up on my end, so I didn't hear anything you said in the last 15 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's super windy. I was saying that, growing up, coming from a family of scholar athletes, mm-hmm. the first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that is how important balance is and how important community is within the context of family. Because, my mom worked shift work. Like I said, my stepfather was away. And my aunts and my cousins and my grandfather got me back and forth to cheerleading practice, right? And then um, even, transitioning to when I entered into my relationship with, everybody knows Dr. Maiden was my initial high school sweetheart, right? And just seeing how supportive his family was during his athletic involvement and making it to the games and making sure, practice and the whole 9 yards. And then transitioning, the years that Andre's father and I were together. And you talk about beating up the highway. It did not make a difference where William and Mary was playing. The only game that we didn't go to was when they played in Yokohama, Japan.
Oh, wow, they played in Japan?
Yeah, William and Mary played in Yokohama, Japan. And that was the only game we didn't go to. Other than that, every single solitary game, whether William and Mary was playing home or away, road trip every weekend, road trip. We were at those games. And then when his younger brother went to college and played football for Townsend, then it was like a divide, right? Like, okay, who's going to Williamsburg, who's going to Townsend, and trying to strike that balance and make it all work. But it did. And as a result, I believe it strengthened his athletic play to know that he could look in the stands and that he could see his parents, that he could see his girlfriend, that he could see his son. Because once Andre got a certain size, his behind was in a stroller, wrapped up in a cocoon, and the stroller covered all up and warm and everything else. So even though he couldn't see him, he's like, and even my baby is in the stands, it's a critical element. It is a critical element. It reminds me of Love and Basketball. You remember in the scene where Monica says to her mom, I must have played in 1,000 games and I can only remember you coming to one. It matters.
Absolutely.
It absolutely positively matters.
And when I think about my family and stuff like that, one of the things I always applaud my family. In 14 years of playing football, I think my parents only missed, oh God, I would honestly, in 14 years, I say they maybe missed 5 games in 14 years. And those games that they were missed, it was because either one of them wasn't feeling good or one of them had ended up in the hospital for something. But outside of that, for 14 years, they were at every game, every little league game, every high school game, every college game. Didn't matter where we were playing, they were pulling up. And it was very much appreciated, and I loved it. I always tell people, my mom is white and things like that. So, when I was playing at Virginia State, I think I maybe had one other teammate at the time who had a white mom, but she won't come into the games. So for me, like every time we run out to the field, I mean, I would always locate my parents, wave to them and stuff like that. And I always tell people, out of all the people yelling and screaming in the crowd, I could always hear my mom's voice in the crowd, because it was just that very distinct, yell and scream and all that. I could hear it every time, no matter how many people we had in the stands, whether it was 200 or 20, 50,000, I could always hear her voice. And I appreciate that. Not everybody gets that. Not all my teammates got that. One of my very good friends, one of my best friends in high school, his mom, she had to work, multiple jobs and stuff like that. His dad was never nowhere to be found. So, just as much as my parents cheered for me, they cheered for him too. Because, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to cut you off, but that's powerful. That's powerful. And thank you for saying that, because that was something that was in my side mind, that two things that you said that provoked thought in me. And when Andre started playing sports at T-ball at 5 years old. So football, basketball, baseball, and running track. You talk about commitment and how important it is to see your parents in the stand. When Andre was in high school, his dad was in grad school at the University of Southern California. Alan would arrange his schedule. He would come, we were living in Florida. he would arrange his schedule, whether it was over spring break or whatever it was that was going on. He would arrange his schedule, Ronnie, and he would come in and he would stay for a week. Even when we lived in Maryland and Andre was playing like midget football and baseball and stuff like that, he always arranged his schedule so that if we were living in another state from him, regardless of what was going on in his life, he would come and stay for a week at a time so that he could catch as many of Dre's games for whatever sports season that was going on. The sacrifice was made. There was a point in time where he lived in New York and Andre and I, were in Florida, and he made the trip. He made the trip because it was important to him for his son to see him sitting in the stands. And to your point about kids that didn't have the support system, that was one of the things that I always loved about being the self-proclaimed teen mom. It was that I would like wrap my arms around these kids and make sure they had their snacks and make sure they had, something extra to drink or eat or whatever the case may be. The games, when depending on how far the away game was, we would stop, whether, at one of the fast food restaurants. I made sure these kids ate because nobody sent them any money. Nobody was there, to nothing. It's not like the coaches were giving them money and making sure everybody ate. And I just felt like that was the right thing to do because you need that support. You need to be able to encourage it. I remember Andre's senior year in high school. Y'all travel. You got to be your suit and your shirt and tie and the whole 9 yards. Ronnie, I had just bought him all new shirts and ties and dress slacks and stuff too. And I come home from work and I was going to school full time, working full time, and making sure that I didn't miss any games. I come home from work and he was like, Mom, I need shirts and ties. What do you mean? I just bought you all with shirts and ties. He said, yeah, but I gave them to so-and-so because he lived with his grandma and she's on a fixed income and she didn't have any money to get him anything and he doesn't have anything. What do you say to that? It's not like I wasn't in a position to be able to get him more. So I did. But I say that, and it has nothing to do with what Lauren did. It has everything to do with the importance of supporting those athletes who don't have a family support system. You can adopt some kids. Know what I'm saying? Adopt a kid. Include a kid in your fold so that they don't cheer them on, hype them up, pat them on the back, tell them good job, let them know that even though whoever is not there in their family, that somebody is rooting for them and believes in them and wants to see them succeed.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think it's also, I think when we think about, as far as a true support system, and I always tell people this, I think one of the biggest factors out of everything that, contributed to me being, being a collegiate athlete and stuff like that. I mean, yes, of course I worked hard and, I put in the work and things like that. And I earned the honor to be able to play college football. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that one of probably the biggest contributing factors to me getting there was the support system that I had around me. And I always tell people, like, I wasn't the most athletically gifted or anything like that in the slightest. I was just a 3-star athlete coming out of high school. So I wasn't even, nobody to even write home about. But I had a lot of teammates who were. I had teammates in high school who should have gone to D1 colleges or, even had the chance to make it to, the professional leagues. They were that talented, but their talent couldn't oversee the lack of support that they had from family, from friends and things like that. And which kind of leads me into what we were talking about earlier when we talk about family and stuff like that. I'm not going to say one of the mindsets that I've adopted, but one of the things that I've really thought about over the last several years, being, I've coached for a couple of years and things like that. And just, being a former student athlete and looking back to our point about support and stuff like that, I think in today's age, yes, even if your family is not supportive, and I think family doesn't also have to necessarily be blood either for you to call them family. And when I think about, for me personally, like, you know, I mean, yes, I had my mom and dad, and they were in my life, and they were a very integral part of me being the student athlete I became. You know, 95% of the work was them, you know, providing, you know, financial resources and taking me to camps and stuff like that. They carried a lot of the work. But that other 5% is not a small 5%. That other 5% was my teachers, was my mentor, was my friends, was, you know, the principals in school. It was other coaches. It was other adult men and things like that that I surrounded myself around and built real relationships with. And they became uncles. They became, you know, mentors and things like that to me and stuff like that. Because, you know, I mean, yes, my family was supportive and stuff, but you need a support system, a big support. I always tell people it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise an athlete. It takes a village to make somebody successful. I saw a quote, I can't remember which billionaire, whoever said it, but they were like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Amen.
And, you know, so for me, I think, you know, to a lot of our student athletes nowadays who are listening, and to our point, you know, when we think about family and stuff like that, I mean, yes, you want your family to be blood relatives and things like that. And they should have it in their hearts and their minds to be able to show you that support and understanding and encouragement that, technically speaking, your family should show you. But my son got 8 uncles who ain't blood.
That's right.
You know, he got 8 uncles right now who ain't blood. He got a whole bunch of aunts who are not blood. He got he got godparents, you know, things like that. So, you know, it takes a village. He's gonna need that support. My voice can't be the only voice that he listens to for 18 years. That would be unrealistic. I don't know everything. But he got 8 other uncles that he can pick their brains about life and about being a man and stuff like that, and take from them and help him form his own opinion and perspective on how it is to be a man in this world. And if he chooses to be a student athlete, how to be a student athlete, because all his uncles played sports too, and they were damn good at it. And so, and I think as much as family is important, you know, we also have to have, I always tell, like, even with our clients, I work with a lot of boys who do not have fathers in their lives. And if they do have a father, they don't deserve to have the title outside of just, you know, they were the sperm donor. And I always tell them, like, and I always tell the mothers, like, look, by 10, 11 years old, if the father don't want to be in their life, that's one thing, but you have to have a positive male role model.
Get Big Brother, Big Sister program.
Have to, because men, we need that, not only as athletes, but just as boys growing into men, period. I always tell mothers, you can be a great single mother, and you can teach your son how to be a great person in the world. But you cannot teach them how to be a man. No knock on you for that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure that I say this because I want to make this recommendation to our viewing and our listening audience. To your point about the extended family, and what brings this back to my remembrances, because I actually got contacted by a current scholar athlete yesterday, and this will ring a bell for you. The concern that the athlete expressed is that they need to start going on visits, and they don't feel like they have the family support to get them to their visits. Back in the day when I was younger and had a lot more energy and a lot more tolerance, I had started an organization called Teens on Track for Success. And a big part of Teens on Track for Success was I took students, not just scholar athletes, a lot of them were, but I took students on college campus tours. Where the particular student athletes were concerned, I transported them to combines. I took them for unofficial visits. And that needs to happen, like, you know, and you can explain better than I, you know, what the window of time is as far as when they can go on official visits and when they can't. You can go on unofficial visits as a scholar athlete. You just, like, the coaches cannot recruit you. Like, you cannot have, you're legally not supposed to have those conversations. But there's nothing stopping you as a scholar athlete from going to see the various campuses beforehand. Like, there's no law against that. These kids, you know, I tell folks that Going for your campus tour is the equivalent of test driving a car before you drive it. You don't want to just make the assumption that, okay, somebody's offering you a scholarship, so you're just going to take, boom, I'm going to go. You want to visit that campus. You need to visit that campus. So what I'm saying to our viewing and listening audience, within the context of family, this is a great opportunity for some of these men, right? And women where the females athletes are concerned, for some of these men to get together, a group of brothers, and say, you know what, we're going to coordinate this trip and we're going to take these young scholar athletes, especially ones that might not be eligible for D1 or D2 scholarship money, but we want to get them exposed to the value of continued education. And then, oh, by the way, keep them engaged in their athletic play too. What's stopping that? You look at the different areas, and I'm from Southern New Jersey. When you look at the schools that are, DC right down the road, HBCU heaven. Virginia right down the road, HBCU heaven. Why would you not say, you know, y'all go here, there, and everywhere and do whatever you want to do? Get you a charter bus from one of them charter bus companies in Cumberland County or over the bridge in Newcastle County, Delaware. Load them boys up, load them girls up, and take them over their spring break or on a date or whatever, and get these student athletes on these campuses, just so that they literally, these campuses, it doesn't cost anything.
Nope.
Schedule the group tour specifically for your football team, for your basketball team, for your hockey team, for your baseball team, and start taking these kids on these trips on here. I'm not knocking the museums, but let's get aligned. You're telling these kids they believe their athletic ability is their key out of the hood. Take them on a darn trip. Don't take them to the freaking museum. Take them to Rutgers. Take them to Fairleigh Dickinson. Take them down to Dell State. Take them to UD. Take them to Towson and Morgan and Howard and at Hampton. Take them. Yep,
absolutely. And I think to that point, when you were saying that, as far as, you know, getting a group of people together and doing that, I think when we talk about community support, part of that social support network, I think that is huge. And also leading into, you know, coaches and teammates and their support of teammates and stuff like that. I think for coaches, and unfortunately, I see this way too often. And, you know, I'm not going to say I was a victim of this, but it's definitely, I feel like it definitely hindered my high school career of having coaches who either they hadn't played at the collegiate level in umpteen decades, or they never played past high school. And oftentimes, and I always tell parents is, you know, you have to be very mindful of being an advocate for your child when it comes to the coaches, because in high school, and I mean, in college too, but necessarily in high school, it is imperative that you make sure that if you feel like your child, your son or daughter is doing exactly what they're supposed to do as an athlete, as a student and things like that, it is imperative for you, A, to know how the college recruiting system works, and B, making sure that the coaches are doing their part, because it's more than just coaching X's and O's at the high school level. It's about having that network of college coaches that you can reach out to and say, hey, look, I got this kid. He, you know, if you can work with him, he just need a couple things, he can be something special, you know. And I think as much as it is important for student athletes to have a reputation about themselves, it's just as important for the coaches to have a reputation about themselves as well, because oftentimes, and I've seen this before, a high school coach will send a kid to a college, and, you know, whether or not, you know, the kid deserved to go, you know, that coach's reputation is weighed on that kid's performance at that school. And if, you know, he sends a kid who might have, you know, some credibility issues or some accountability issues, but they still send them, and that school's like, well, now he just sent us a basket case. Why would we go back to his school? You know, having those lines of open communication, and then you as the parent making sure that the coaches are being upfront and transparent with you about what they're doing to help your kid as well. A lot of times oftentimes parents just don't know. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say, is that, and that's why it's so important for it. So again, you know, you constantly provoking my thoughts. So just for folks that are listening and viewing that don't know, when you have college campus tours, prior to the tour, there's what's called an information session. And the information session is going to give you pertinent information about the programs and the facilities and the code of conduct and all of those logistic and legalistic things, if you will, that go on in the college environment. I think that it is incredibly important. And here, to your point, let's go ahead and call the coaches out. Here is where the coaches can step up their game. Mm-hmm. What is wrong? And look, sidebar, for any coaches across the country that are doing this already, hats off to you. We applaud you. But there's so much room for coaches to hold information sessions at their high schools to educate, empower, and liberate their parents of their athletes or the caregivers of these athletes about the process. So oftentimes, at least what I have seen personally and professionally for years, Ronnie, when I say years, decades, is folk get these dollar signs in their eyes, and their primary thing is he going pro, she going, whatever it is. And we know that only 2% do. There's so much legalism that is involved in the recruiting process that parents don't know. Mm-hmm. They just don't know. Well, who the heck should be telling them?
Exactly.
Let's face it. In a perfect world, it would be great if parents took the initiative to learn this information for themselves, but we know that that is simply just not the case. Somebody has got to take the time to educate them about this process so that because let's face it, there's a lot of times the recruiters are coming to the house, the coach is not at the house. We don't know let's keep it real. All recruiters aren't the most, honest people on the face of the planet.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, that's real. That's facts. So if knowledge is power and you can perish from a lack of knowledge, the coaches are in a prime position to be able to educate and empower these parents, particularly parents that are uninformed about anything other than their kids' athletic ability. Coaches need to be stepping up and rallying these parents together and literally having an information session so that they are clear on what to expect, what not to expect, the types of conversations they need to be having, what they should be listening for, what the red flags are, because trust and believe there are red flags, what the red flags are, and paying attention so that they are making well-informed decisions about what is in the athletic and academic best interest of their children.
I agree. I absolutely. And I will say, I do know some high school coaches who are doing that and who are taking that initiative to make sure that, because what we do know is that, especially with this whole NIL deal coming out and things like that, the college football landscape is changing, and it's going to be, it's going to look different every year from now, as they make new rules, as they make bylaws. And honestly, there might be a situation where, kids might choose to do something else other than going to college football. We don't know how that landscape is going to look over the next 5 to 10 years, but I don't expect parents to keep up with all that changing information every single year. That would be, if you could, would it be cool? Absolutely. But to your point, I think that is up to coaches. Yes, you coach X's and O's, and that is important. However, you are also coaching with the idea that, look, some of these kids want to go on and play college football and further. Not everybody's going to go, but the ones who have a chance to go, take the initiative or take just the second to really implore as many resources as you have at your disposal to them. Yeah. And, even teammates. And I think, especially for high school athletes, if there's one social influence that is the most imperative and the biggest, is probably that of your teammates. And as much as we know that your coaches and your family, they're gonna keep it real with you and things like that, oftentimes as a student athlete in high school, we're really not paying attention to what they're saying all the time. I always tell parents, like, look, when kids get to about 10 or 11 or they hit middle school, your voice and your opinion is kind of tuned out for the next 8-9 years. Nothing against you. It's just over, natural human development. We grow out of mindset. We're like, okay, yeah, I hear my parents, but well, I want to hear what they got to say too. And I want to hear what that person got to say. I might like what they have to say better than my parents. That's just how we all go through that natural process and that natural development. So, but our teammates have a great, great influence. And I always tell people this, just like with coworkers, you know, working in the workforce is almost like being on a team. You don't have to like everybody on your team. Right. And I'm not telling you that. You don't have to like every single person. You won't like every single person. A football team is in a sports world is one of the greatest microcosms of how society functions. Because in football oftentimes have the largest rosters about all the sports, and you get a wide, diverse range of people of different backgrounds, cultures, genders, whatever the case may be, all of that, all in sports, especially in football. You get that. And so you often see, look, you don't have to like all your teammates. I didn't like all my teammates. Some of my teammates I couldn't stand. And if in practice, if I no, look, I'm a changed man, all right? I'm not young no more. But in practice, if I could catch you slipping and I ain't like you, hey, no hard feelings. No, I'm just saying, no hard feelings, but I'm gonna catch you slipping. Just saying. But I'm a changed man. I don't do that no more. But you know, I think for me, like I had when I was in high school, I had 3 teammates that I were my best friends in high school. You know, we worked out together, we trained together, we watched film together, we did everything together. You can have a couple of good friends and push each other and challenge each other to be the best versions of yourself. I mean, literally, we would work out 4 and 5 hours a day until we could. I remember one summer, me and one of my good friends, we were working out, and we had worked out for like 5 hours one day, just cause. And then we went outside to try and play basketball, and I never forget it. It was hot as I don't know what, and the ball had ricocheted off the backboard, and it really felt like we was running in slow motion. And we both tried to lean for the ball and fell over, and just started laughing and like, yo, like we were really out here trying to kill ourselves for the season. And it's just like, you know, when you have friends like that who are really pushing you to be the best version you can be, that is imperative. That is paramount for your development as a student athlete. And once again, just like you have teammates who are good influences, you have teammates who they know they're not going to play college football. They know they're not going on to the next sport. So they're just there, honestly, just to be a jersey player. They have a jersey, they go out there on the sidelines, and they're cool with that. You have people like that in life too. You have people like that in life where they just go through the motions. They're just there to get a paycheck. They're just there to say, hey, I'm here so I don't get fined. You have people like that in life too. Treat them accordingly. As much as it is important to have boundaries for parents and coaches, it is just as important to have boundaries for those teammates. Hey, look, I'm not into that. I don't really want to talk about that. I ain't trying to go there with y'all. I'm going to sit this one out. It's not, once again, boundaries are not for that person. The boundaries are for you. When that person passes your boundary, that lets you know, hey, I'm good. I don't need this in my life. So having those teammates as an imperative part of your social support network is extremely crucial.
Yeah, I think that it's rich. Golly, it's 12:19. I think that it's really important to put some emphasis on emotional intelligence within the family context for our athletes, because what we know to be true is what we've been saying, you know, the whole show, is that when it comes to family, your family should be your greatest ally. They should be your greatest support system. And clearly we've painted the picture that that's not always the case. But it's also important to note that without emotional intimacy in the family system, family contact can become a burden. And when family contacts are a burden, athletic performance can be adversely impacted. So I just want to spend the last few minutes just rather quickly just highlighting for our viewing and listening audience how important emotional intelligence is within the family context. And for those of you who don't know, just like you have an IQ, your intelligence quotient, how smart you are, your EQ, i.e. emotional intelligence, is how emotionally present or how emotionally strong you are within the context of your relationships. And obviously for the purpose of this show, where your family relationships are concerned. So just want to share with you some quick tips on how you can improve your emotional intelligence in your family relationships. And first and foremost, it's really important for you to take care of your health, that's physical and emotional, if you want to be in a position to take care of somebody else. So where parents are concerned, for example, in order for you to be fully present for your children, regardless of what stage they are in their athletic career, whether it's elementary school, high school, college, or even professionally, you need to make sure that you're making your own emotional and physical health a priority. And the same thing for the athlete, particularly at the collegiate and at the professional level, because if you're not well, if you're not able, again, mentioned last week, the whole thing with Antonio Brown, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what is wrong? I don't understand, how important it is to be an active listener and listening to others if you expect to be heard. Teach an emotional choice, Ronnie, that, being able to manage your moods, and letting all of the toxic and negative emotions go. Stop letting stuff build up. Stop letting stuff build up and erode your sense of self and adversely impact your relationships. You're having a bad game because you had an argument with your boo, or your mom, ticked you off, or whoever, your dad let you down again, or whatever the case may be. You get to choose what you do with those emotions. Are you going to allow somebody in your family to rob you of your sense of self and rob you of your ability to be the best that you can be in your sport because of how they're showing up? It's old school. It's not what happens to you in life that dictates your success or failure. It's your response to it. Teaching generosity by receiving as well as giving. And that might seem really odd in the sports context, but it's really not, because I'm gonna say this PC. I suck at that, but I'm gonna say this PC. You have to be careful about the demands that you're putting on your children, and we've talked about this in past shows. The demands that you put on your child to be the hero of the family and to get everybody out. And the flip side of that is having a level of compassion and empathy for, like you said, the parent who's working multiple jobs trying to take care of, how many ever children that they have, and trying to hold it down. There needs to be empathy. There needs to be this mutual exchange of empathy within the family system in order to help everyone to get along more harmoniously. Taking this one's huge, Ronnie. Taking responsibility for what you communicate silently. Baby. I'm gonna let you piggyback on that when we got 7 minutes. Give me a couple minutes to communicate on that, and I'll bang out the rest.
And another way I can say that is being accountable for your projection of how you feel in a certain situation. And I'm glad you said, emotional intelligence, things like that. I like to call it emotional maturity. Because I always tell people, when we think about maturity, people often get it confused. It's like, when we say maturity, we're thinking of, oh, I'm an adult, I pay bills, I save my money, I go to work, I don't, commit no crimes, I'm mature. Well, yeah, I mean, in that definition of maturity, okay, yeah, you've checked off all the boxes. But what we also often fail to realize, and this is to my point earlier about, from birth to 18 and then from 18 and then on, is that emotional maturity piece. And just as much as it is for you, career-wise, physically, and all that to become mature, it is imperative that you develop emotional maturity as well. And for the student athletes out there listening, and this is, and I definitely want to say this, because we have a lot of student athletes out there, unfortunately, who are in a situation where the adults around them do not have emotional maturity. And so I will say this, and for those student athletes out there who are going through a situation like that, where you are raised by parents or raised by family or people around you who do not have the emotional maturity that you need to be the best version of yourself. That does not mean that you can't start working on that groundwork now as a teenager.
That's right.
Because one of the important things as teenagers to understand is, like, yes, you're a teenager and yes, you're a child by law and stuff like that, but you will become an adult one day.
Yeah.
And so various things that you put off to the side and say, you know what, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. Later is coming.
Fast.
Later is coming. So I implore you, look, it is not an ideal situation. Not everybody is raised in an ideal situation. We strive for that. We encourage it. We wish for that, but we live in reality. And not every student athlete and not every person is raised in an ideal situation. So for the student athletes out there who are listening, whether you're college, high school, whatever, understand this. Just because your parents or your family does not have the emotional maturity to help you along your way does not mean that you can't start to develop that emotional maturity. And what I mean by that is, to your point, being responsible for nonverbal actions, for parents who are dismissive of when a child telling them what's going on, for a parent who is, aggressive or mean mugging or just nasty to their children because of things they have going on, for trying to belittle your child's achievements because you didn't achieve something growing up or you didn't get that opportunity. Those type of things. For you have to be responsible and accountable for what you project onto your children, because you are your child's first teacher. I always tell adults, your children are not doing anything that you haven't shown them or allowed to be around them growing up. So when you look at your child, you're looking at yourself. I was joking with my wife yesterday, and we were talking about, when our son gets older and, his personality starts coming out and stuff like that. And we were talking about, the first time he tells us no. And I was laughing at my wife. I was like, have you ever looked at the mirror and had an attitude with yourself and told you no? I said, well, that's what's going to happen when he get older, because he looks smack like you. So it's going to be like you telling you no.
Exactly.
And so as a parent, how do you prepare for that? Because it happens. That's a natural part of development.
Absolutely.
But I implore parents, have that emotional maturity about yourself to be accountable and responsible for what you project onto your child, verbally and non-verbally, because those things matter. Your child sees you when you don't think they see you. They hear you when you don't think they hear you. They move and act how you are their first teacher. So it is important for you as that first teacher to make a good, what do they always say? You can't make a good first impression the second time around.
That's right. That's right.
But that doesn't mean you can't own up to your mistakes and show your child that, hey, I made a mistake, but I'm gonna learn from that and I'm gonna do better.
Yeah. And that actually, you just finished up the remainder of those tips, and just to add a couple more in, how important it is to discover what each person's unique needs are within the family system, and to be generous and express in love. But your lead in about, you are your kid's first teacher, that is actually the number one foundational principle of emotional intelligence in the family. You have to look to yourself first. Be first partaker of your own words. You set the first example. You set the tone for the family system as a parent, as a caregiver. And Ronnie, if we didn't say nothing else this whole show, the second foundational principle, remember that consistency builds trust. They have to know that you're going to be there. They have to know that you believe in them. They have to know that you're rooting for them. They have to know that you care. Yes, clothes and food and shelter are important, but emotional intelligence in your relationships is paramount. If you rob your children, your partners, your teammates of emotional intelligence, I guarantee you it will erode the quality, the integrity, and the strength and health of the relationships. You have to be emotionally present. Remember that knowing people doesn't mean you understand them. That requires work. Recognizing that being close doesn't mean being clones. I don't have to be your mini you. We can be who we are independently and respect each other's boundaries. You have to watch out for emotional destructive memories, and you have to cherish every stage of life. And this might come as a surprise to you, but even in some of the most adverse situations and circumstances that you could ever experience, if you look close enough, you can find a seed of equivalent benefit. In this holiday season, And as 2021 comes to a close, we are so thankful and grateful and humble that you have hung in there with us all year, that you have communicated with us and let us know that you appreciate this information, that you're finding it helpful, applicable, and that it is doing exactly what we set out for it to do. It is educating you, it is empowering you, it is liberating you, it is helping you to make life transforming decisions from a well-informed place. We wish you a phenomenal remainder of 2021. For those of you that celebrate the holidays, have a blessed, highly favored, and harmonious and safe Christmas, New Year, and we are coming back in 2022 with a vengeance. Wait till y'all see the lineup of shows that we have and some of these amazing guests that we're gonna have in 2022. We are coming out the gates swinging.
Amen.
Ronnie, what you got to say to them? Send us off.
Hey, look, it's been a phenomenal year. We appreciate everybody that's been rocking with us from January to now. Thank you for all the guests who have come on our show this year. I'm looking forward to 2022. And like I said, spend these last 13 days reflecting and asking yourself, what can I do to get 1% better the next day? But understand this, all we have promises today. So, right. What would yourself say that you're going to be proud of at the end of the day? And with that being said, have a Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And
you're so stupid.
And look, I appreciate everybody rocking with us. And look, I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And we will see you all January 8th.
Yes,
January 8th, 2022 at 11 a.m. But understand this, we still going to be rocking on HSRN every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. and then 10 p.m. the next day. All right. So check us out. All right. And look, have a happy new year. And we'll see y'all in 2022.
Ronnie.
What up?
Go Cowboys. Woo, woo.
Can we leave them in 2020? Can we leave them in 2021?
I love you.
Can we leave a team in 2021? Get a new team?
Negative. Bye, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, y'all.
Bye-bye.